assessments. My name is Benny Segeri, and I'm the Director of Faculty Development and E-Learning here at ADEA. Before we begin, I want to thank everyone for taking time out of your busy schedules and joining us today. We created this ADEA CCI Just-in-Time series as a way to crowdsource and rapidly share innovations in dental education that were occurring all over the country as a response to the COVID-19 pandemic. And we heard from you, our audience, that there was a clear need for more discussion on virtual clinics and assessments after our first installment of this series. As such, we reached out today to today's presenter, Brandy Cohen from Pacific University, to share her innovations in this new educational environment. After Brandy's presentation, we're going to open the floor to Q&A, so please feel free to send us your questions throughout the presentation by utilizing the questions box to your right. And before I turn the controls over, I also want to point out a few housekeeping notes. At any point, you can maximize your screen and click Hide Webcam to remove the speaker's live video feed. A PDF copy of the slides is located in the Handouts area of the menu to your right. If you experience audio issues during the presentation, they are likely due to local internet connectivity or network bandwidth issues. In those cases, it may be helpful to switch your audio output to the telephone option found within the audio menu. And lastly, this presentation is being recorded and will be placed on adea.org/elearn within a few business days. And with that said, I'll now hand the mic over to Brandy to begin the discussion. Brandy?
Thanks, Ben. Hello and welcome. Thank you guys for being here. I first want to thank ADEA for the opportunity to share what we've been doing at Pacific University, and a special thank you to my director, Amy Copeland, for sharing our efforts with the ADEA community and the team of faculty that helped make this project successful. I am the junior clinic lead at Pacific University, and I teach the fundamentals course for clinic applied dental hygiene care for the junior cohorts. This opportunity fell into my lap due to the COVID circumstances, and I had no idea that others would be so interested in what we've done at Pacific. So we've been very busy since March 30th when we decided to pursue our clinical courses virtually. And this presentation is going to outline how we made this happen in such a short amount of time. But that doesn't make it the best way or the right way. And so I just want to encourage you to hopefully take away one little golden nugget and tailor it to fit your needs. Since I've implemented this project, I've been more interested in virtual education, as I hope you will be as well. So here's my disclosure. I just want to let everyone know that neither myself or members of my family have any type of financial relationship with any commercial entities that may be relevant to this presentation. And again, I want to reiterate, I am not the expert. I'm just like you. I'm doing everything I possibly can to ensure that our students are progressing forward in their education during this time. And I'm embracing the change and learning as I go. So I do want to put that out there and let you know I have this experience, and I would love to be a resource any way that I can for other educators. But I do have to admit that I have enjoyed this process a lot more than I thought I would. So here are our objectives that we're going to cover today. We're going to discuss some resources and platforms for facilitating virtual clinical assessments, and then discuss how we use table rods, typodonts, and standardized cases for home assessments via video conferencing. And then lastly, after we get done at hopefully recognizing the value of OSCEs and rubrics to ensure that these assessments are objective during the virtual environment. So I'm sure we all know what OSCEs are, the Objective Structured Clinical Examination, and these are typically utilized in healthcare education to assess competency based on observation. So they have been shown to be precise, objective, and reproducible, and allowing us to continue to have a uniform testing of our students with a wide range of skills. I want to talk about process evaluations. You might also know that as skill evaluations, but how we used to do it then, right? So less than a couple weeks ago, our process evaluations and skill evaluations were done on live patient, direct patient care through the observation and standardized lab settings. So students completed their process evaluations at their own pace and based off patient needs. OSCEs were also scheduled at the end of the semester in a standardized lab setting, which some of these stations were completed on typodonts or dental mannequins, and others were completed with direct patient care. So now things are going to look a little different, specifically with the use of a table rod and a mannequin specifically, but also with standardized cases. And we were able to complete process evaluations that were unmet requirements during the spring virtually. So some of those were completed virtually, and some of them that could not be completed at home for students, those were pushed to the fall settings in hopes that we would be able to have some direct patient care during that time. So not everything was successfully completed. Our students are getting a work in progress right now, and everything that cannot be completed as of now will hopefully be completed by the fall semester. But we wanted to lighten our load, and this might look a little differently because we're using lots of technology now. How do we know that it follows CODA standards? And I know that's something that we've all been looking at as CODA has updated their website, but specifically when you look at the CODA standards, they define distance learning as a separation between and a time between instructor and student. So they outline what that specifically looks like. It could be in the use of television, audio, computer transmission, or even audio and computer conferencing, which we are specifically talking about today. And what's nice is they also encourage us to use innovations within our program design based on our educational principles. And that brings me to, what we've done at Pacific is we haven't changed our expectations. We took them and moved them virtually. So encouraging you all that use what you have and try to move that virtually as much as possible. Sorry, I'm getting a few on my screen here. Nothing has changed in regards to educational principles, learning objectives, and outcomes. So we're not redesigning, we're not reinventing the wheel, but we are redesigning it. It's going to look a little different, but it's still going to function the exact same. So here are some platforms and resources that I utilize. This might overwhelm you just by looking at this, as it did me as well when I started this process, but I specifically want to look at the left side of your screen here. This is the list of resources and platforms that I utilize. So if you're familiar with Word documents, and that was a great place to start. I also used Box to store all of my files because I was sharing a lot of links. And through sharing a lot of links, I was able to still update certain aspects of the documents, and it would update and change on everyone else's end as well. I utilize Zoom as the main platform for facilitating not only the OSCEs and process evaluations, but also for our calibration meetings, as I'm sure some of you are using Zoom or maybe a different platform. Screencast-O-Matic and YouTube, I used both of these to develop instructional videos for faculty and students. I feel like we're all getting tons of emails right now, and it was nice to send a video, and I know for myself it's nice to see a video instead of having to read through a list of instructions. And then lastly here, I used Word documents or Qualtrics survey to develop the rubrics or evaluations. If you're not familiar with anything on the left side, I've put a few things on the right side of the screen that you might be familiar with. So I just want to encourage you to use what you're comfortable with and build from that. Familiarity is definitely going to help this process. So we're going to start with student preparation and calibration. This didn't take too much work. Once I got this developed, most of the time was spent getting faculty comfortable and calibrating them on the process. So what the main important thing is, I used a Word document to put together everything that students need to know about this virtual evaluation that was going through OSCEs or process evaluation. So I literally named it everything you need to know, so they weren't searching through different emails or trying to find things on Noodle. It was in one place. So the layout of that was first instructions and preparation. And this is what I use to kind of prepare them for the next steps. Okay, now we're moving virtually. What do we need to do together, and what do they need to be doing to prepare themselves? And we used a Zoom platform to discuss a Q&A. So after this document, the Everything You Need to Know document was created, I sent that out to students. I gave them a couple days to chew on it, write down some questions that they had, and then we set up a Zoom session. That Zoom session looked like going over a Q&A and actually setting up their Typodont and getting all of their computer or phones or whatever they were going to use to video themselves, kind of getting that set up so they weren't nervous. You know, I'm sure they were nervous, but they weren't too stressed the day of because they had that time to kind of set up and know exactly where they were going to be testing. Also, I utilized Flipgrid. This is a great community. It focuses on videos specifically. So I created my own Flipgrid. Students logged into the Flipgrid. They chose what process evaluation they wanted to demonstrate the skill. And this was just a way for me to give immediate formative feedback. I would get an email every time that video was submitted. And I was able to create a rubric specifically from our process evaluation criteria that we were looking at. And what's nice is they provide a QR code, so I just copied and pasted that QR code into the Everything You Need to Know document, and they were able to just click it on their phone. It was really, really easy. Important schedules and dates. Obviously, this is important. I put it in red, I underlined it so that everyone knew, but one thing that I did do was the schedule you can see is in light blue and underlined. I embedded a link, a hyperlink, into the Word document because I knew once I sent that schedule out, something could change, and so I wanted them to have the most up-to-date version. So think of those things that you think might change during the time you send out the document for them to review, and then the day, prior to the day of. And if there is anything that changes, letting them know, hey, go back into the Everything You Need to Know document, click on that schedule, and make sure you have the most up-to-date schedule. And then lastly, we had a list of the OSCE topics and the instructions. So this is items that they need, description of the station, the grading rubric, and highlighting what it's going to take to pass. What's the passing score. And some of the OSCE stations were passed at a 70%, or some of them were passed at a 75%. And we developed this based on collaboration with faculty and figuring out where the students needed to be, and were they more at a beginning level, a developing level, or a more competent level. And just to highlight here, I did use shared hyperlinks from Box for the schedule, and there are a few things when we get to the faculty document that I created, but you want to make sure that you are putting these links in here in case things change. You don't have to send 10 different updates to a document. So I wanted to give you an overview of what the Flipgrid looks like. Very user-friendly. This is the one that I created right when we left for spring break. I had no idea that this was going to happen, but if you don't use it, you lose it. And until students found out that we were going to have to be testing, on their instrumentation skills, no one had posted, and then they started posting, which is, that's okay. Anyway, the students would log on to the Flipgrid. They would scroll down to whichever assessment that they needed to video, and it was based on their unmet requirements. They would click on it, they'd follow the instructions, and then they'd find this green button. They click on this, very easy. It pops up into the window that they are going to video themselves. And what's nice here is you can see they can put text on here, emojis, very user-friendly. In the upper right-hand corner, you can see that little book, and then underneath that is a little notepad. Students can actually click that notepad and put notes up on the screen that aren't shown in their video. So maybe they're just showing communication between their patient of the importance of an EO-IO or whatever you want them to, assess their skills, and they can show communication that way. So very cool. This is the scheduled Q&A and setup session. This is not my class. This is straight off of Zoom's account. Just a nice overview of what it looked like, what our Q&A looked like. So it's everybody in the class, 32 students. We first went over the Q&A, so they had already read the document, came to our Q&A session. We discussed a few things. And then the rest of that session, we spent setting up their table rods, their type-it-ons, having their instruments out, kind of demonstrating different things to make sure that the faculty could see what they were doing. So we specifically looked at the lighting, the focus, and some students preferred to stand. They just couldn't get in that right position with the chair that they were using. So I would say over 50% of students did stand in dentistry to show their instrumentation skills, just an example. A few things that I think would be important to know for faculty facilitating this via Zoom is if you have all the students in one screen and you right-click on the video, you can click and pin one person's video to your entire screen. So if you're trying to individually look at these little tiny boxes to try to give feedback on positioning, it's very hard. And so you want to right-click, pin that video to where you're only seeing that one student. And once everything looks good, you right-click their video and unpin the video, and you just go through that entire process to help give that feedback for individual students. Also, what would be nice is recording the session, letting them know that you're going to record the session. It can be used as a calibration tool for faculty. Faculty can see what was discussed during the Q&A, what the students were told, the expectations, how they were positioned, and what that looks like. So when they log on the day of to proctor this, they have a good idea of what to expect. And then lastly here, we've got the faculty preparation and calibration. This took the most time, but I think it was the most important aspect of this entire process. Is making sure that your faculty felt prepared, comfortable, and calibrated before we actually implemented. So I created a document for them as well, and this specifically looks at the OSCE. So we had 4 different stations and 4 different faculty for that station. So each document looked a little different depending on your station, but they typically had the same thing in there. So the first thing was the schedule, that the same schedule that the students had, but they had embedded Zoom link. So the student was clicking on the same link that the faculty would and making sure that you're all in the same Zoom room. I did put a class composite in there for faculty. Some faculty had worked with students more than others, and during that time I just wanted them to have a copy in case. So I don't know if students had changed their name to something fun on Zoom, we know exactly who was taking the process evaluation. We had instructions for submitting rubrics. Some faculty saved that to their desktop and emailed them to me. Some faculty were more comfortable in saving them into a box folder that I created. So I let them choose because this is all about efficiency. I wanted them to feel comfortable during the process. Items that students need. So remember the everything you need to know document for students had what they need, but specifically I wanted faculty to know what the expectation for students was. So what did they need to have prior to the session starting so we didn't waste a lot of time, and what the faculty needed during that session as well to make everything run smoothly. I had instructions for each station. I wanted to make this as objective as possible. So even scenarios that faculty went through, they had a running list of instructions of what they would inform the student to ensure every student had the most equal opportunity at the station. And then lastly, some important links. So easy ways for faculty to click on the link, access the evaluation, fill out the form, and save it. So everything that faculty needed was in one document and they didn't have to search around. I used Screencast-O-Matic and YouTube to develop those instructional videos that we talked about earlier for faculty, but also for students as well if I wanted to show them how to use Flipgrid or something like that. We use Zoom for all of our calibration meetings, but we did utilize the phone as well. So if they couldn't figure something out on their end and I couldn't see it, they would call me, we'd do some FaceTime, and I could walk them through it as well. So Zoom and my iPhone really helped with calibration. And then lastly, Qualtrics. Again, some of the rubrics were done through a Word document, but specifically for our process evaluations, those were done through a survey. And again, just emphasizing, I use the hyperlinks from Box to share those documents. So maybe you're using Google Docs, you can use those shared links and it will always be that most up-to-date. So now let's get into the logistics of kind of how this functioned and what it looked like. First, this is what the schedule looks like. And you can see there were 4 different stations, and I inserted each faculty Zoom link underneath the station. So specifically for me, if it was Brandy's Zoom link here, I wanted students to know who was going to be evaluating them in the room and who to expect. So I specifically had their name there, but I embedded the Zoom links within the schedule. The student and faculty would click on that link to access the Zoom room, and especially based on the timing for students. But the faculty never left the Zoom room. So students were coming in at 8 o'clock, taking their, going through the station and completing it, logging out, another student would come in at 8:30. So you didn't have to change throughout the different rooms. Once you click on that link, it opens up in Zoom. We click Open Zoom, and then we establish a meeting password. So this is an instructional video that I actually created to show faculty how to set up their passwords. And again, during a calibration meeting, I was able to go through and test all of those passwords to make sure that they all worked. So we used something very simple, class of 2021. Actually not, it was just class 2021. Lowercase, no spaces, very easy, and every single person had the same one, so students didn't have to remember, okay, so this password is for this one, and it was very streamlined. And so we utilized this because we heard on the news, and even at Pacific, we had some hackers get into Zoom, so this was a way of eliminating that. So I would encourage you to use the password. Here we are, we've now entered our password, we're in our Zoom room. I'm sure all of us have used Zoom, maybe you're using a different platform, but I wanted to highlight a few settings that I think were beneficial for us. You don't have to know exactly how to function the entirety of Zoom. So first and foremost, making sure you know how to mute and unmute yourself. When you see that red line, diagonal line across the mute, that means you're muted. So make sure you're not saying anything inappropriate if you're not muted. So also starting your video, maybe you want to stop your video for some reason if you're waiting around. Managing participants, this is a nice setting that they have. You're able to click on it and see everyone that is in the room. And we're going to talk more about it, but you can see to the right-hand side, that's what the participants, the little box that pops up that correlates with that. You'll see share screen and recording here. So some of the sessions I recorded and some of them I didn't, but maybe you wanted to record a session, you wanted to do a live stream with a student and give them feedback. They're able to utilize this later to practice. So this is a great way to use that for learning kind of preparation before they take the OSCE. But the share screen was nice because we were able to share cases with students. So we would share our screen, we'd share medical history, the patient's information, and then we'd scroll down and share some a perio chart, radiographs, and go through that that way. You could also share them within the chat box if you wanted to, but we wanted to ensure that students weren't taking this information and sharing it with everyone else that hadn't taken that station yet. So we just shared our screen and then unshared the screen when we were ready to go through the questions for that actual station. And then lastly here on the lower right-hand side of the participants, you can see those 3 ellipses or the little dots. If you click that, you'll see some really cool settings here, but specifically I want us to look at the enable waiting room setting. This was really nice because we found that if this was not checked and we weren't utilizing this setting, that students could come in at 8:29 while another student is finishing up, and you would have to tell the student, go ahead and log out and come back in a minute. We had to really tell them to focus on logging in at the right time. But if you have this setting, they can log in at 8:20 and maybe their testing time is 8:30, and they go into a waiting room that is listed in the participants box here, and you can see which students are in the waiting room and admit them as you need. So you'd admit them based on the actual schedule, which was nice because then you don't worry about, anything with FERPA and student information. Next was our process skill evaluation. So if we were specifically looking at instrumentation skills, I set up a time to meet with our clinic and education coordinator and make sure that this was doable. And these pictures are not as good as what we actually got with the students. I actually was able to get closer to them and really make sure that we could see adaptation and all those different things. But I would encourage you to get with a faculty and run this process and see if it works for you. Maybe you're wanting to see the occlusal surface of the tooth if you're doing some type of restoration, restorative work. Maybe looking into some type of device that is attached to a table. They've got a table rod where you can attach your phone to, or a headband where you can attach your phone to get a closer view and to zoom in specifically for those surfaces. But this is what we looked at. We ran this session and we took all of our process evaluations that we used in Axiom, so what the students were being evaluated on during patient care, and we just put that into a Qualtrics survey. We had a specific link to that survey that was in the faculty OSCE document where they would click on that. They would access the survey. This is what it specifically looked like. It would open up in their browser. They would fill out the student name, instructor's name, level of evaluation. At Pacific, we specifically have a beginning, developing, and competent. So our students are taking the same process evaluations at higher levels as they progress through the program. So some process evaluations were evaluated at a beginning level, some were evaluated at the developing level. And then if you go through the entire process evaluation, you would evaluate, make sure the student passed or they needed to repeat, give that immediate formative feedback then for the student, letting them know, did they pass or do they need to repeat, giving any general comments. And then the lower right-hand corner is where you would submit this survey. And once you submit it, it would show this survey has been submitted, and then you go back to that link in your document and click it again to start another student's evaluation. So very user-friendly. Here's just a copy or a picture of the OSCE station. This is the faculty OSCE document. So this was for the medical emergency station that we did. But you can see those top 3 links, just a quick link to the schedule, the composite, and then the faculty's individual Zoom link. So you could put the faculty's individual Zoom link there, but you want to make sure that it matches the one that you have in your schedule, because your schedule where you have that link embedded is what the student would click on to use to make sure that you all go to the same place. Down at the bottom, you'll see just the instructions for submitting the OSCE document. Again, they could submit it through Box, they could save it to their desktop and send an email, whatever they were comfortable with. I was very open because I wanted us to be as efficient as possible. You can see the items that the faculty and student need on the right-hand side here, instructions to give the student, and then instructions for faculty. So that's where the instructions for faculty, I had the quick links in there just to kind of give them an overview of this is the process you follow for each student. Here's a copy of our rubric that we used for the medical emergency station. What's nice here is for the OSCE stations, we specifically used hard copies, and not hard copies, but we used Word documents and developed a rubric. But again, you could use a survey form depending on what your faculty would be comfortable with. And I think the most important thing for faculty was highlighting the points that students had to get in order to pass the station, because doing all of that math might seem a little overwhelming, and it just cuts down on time. So they were able to look at that quickly and know, did they pass or not, give that feedback to the student. And if the student didn't pass, I got an email from that faculty at the end of the day, and I set up a remediation session with that student. Here's just a little cheat sheet. So there were some extra documents that I included in the faculty OSCE document to help the flow. So I had a cheat sheet for medical emergencies, and the faculty would choose between one of the 4 and give the same instructions. So it was very objective, very the same for each student. One thing we're talking about everything that we need to do. I want you to know that you can't do this alone. You know, I would encourage you choosing faculty who are calibrated with the cohort and that know the clinical expectations, and ensure that they're available during that time frame, because it does take quite a bit of time to facilitate all the different evaluations. Schedule those Zoom meetings to calibrate with faculty. And for those who feel comfortable with the resources and platforms that you're using, delegate those specific tasks to help them be a part of it and help them develop this entire project that you're going to be doing. And I would encourage you to leave yourself, maybe the clinic lead or someone who has kind of put the whole thing together, leaving them available to troubleshoot during the implementation phase. I questioned if I wanted to do this, but I'm really happy that I did. So I actually developed and got all the documents ready, calibrated everyone, and then during the actual OSCE and process evaluation phase, I was at my computer and my phone and ready for anything, you know, technology or something that went down, maybe another faculty's computer or internet went down. I was able to log on and still facilitate the actual evaluation with the student. Self-evaluation, so I haven't been able to do an evaluation, a formal one, survey to send out to faculty and students, but this is just for me. I'm really happy that I was available as a floater to help troubleshoot during that time. I utilized the contact list to share with faculty or to share with students. So I had the list of faculty contacts in the event that something happened and they needed to get a hold of the faculty. But I wish I would have had a list of the students' contacts, and I didn't think about that because faculty and students would call me at the same time to help troubleshoot, and it was overwhelming at times, but we ended up making it happen. But if the faculty had a list of students that they could call and say, hey, I don't see you in the session, you know, what's going on? That would have been nice to have. Get with your IT department and help them check any type of settings that you might be having for Zoom or another platform. I want to encourage everyone to make sure that you do have an unlimited Zoom access. I think this is the paid version. Our school actually paid for all of the educators to have the unlimited access. If you don't, you only have a 40-minute session, and that's stressful because you're going to be doing this a lot longer than 40 minutes depending on how many students are logging in during that time. And then making sure that those passwords work and that everyone has the same password. Faculty use their personal meeting ID links to match, making sure that those match with the ones in the schedule. So what they're sending me is the unlimited version, and that's the one that they're going to be logging into, and that's the one that's in the schedule. The enabling those waiting room settings in Zoom were really nice. Some faculty used it and some faculty didn't, but even students mentioned that they liked it because they felt like when students logged in, you know, it kind of took away because the faculty had to address the other student to tell them to log out. And then set up those calibration Zoom meetings with the faculty ahead of time. I definitely would do at least 2 and maybe a third one to do a final run through for each station as needed. Some faculty felt very comfortable facilitating it on the day of without doing a run through with me, and some other faculty, you know, wanted that practice. So it definitely depends on their comfort. And lastly here, just an evaluation. I wasn't able to send out a survey yet because we finished everything last week, but I did do a debrief with faculty and got some feedback. Some students' focus and quality of their video was better than others. We thought maybe the use of cell phones would have been better. High-speed internet, we had a few glitches, but it was manageable. Enabling those waiting rooms to ensure privacy for the student, making sure that those Zoom links work. Few faculty sent me a link. It was different than the one that I had in the schedule, so making sure that all that is streamlined, and then making sure you have more than 40 minutes. You've got that unlimited access. And from students, we were able to see that they were able to critically think through the process evaluation and OSCE schedule, and this is something they sent through email and even meetings with me. We didn't just have them develop and show a skill, but we also had them talk through what they were doing. And it really was amazing to see how much they know and show how much they know about the skills that they were performing, because they weren't typically doing that during patient care. They thought it was organized, that it ran smoothly, and felt very prepared based on the document that I gave them. Nothing was thrown out of left field. You know, they felt like what they were told is exactly what they were tested on. So in the end, we were able to complete, 32 students completed an OSCE of 4 stations and a total of 104 process evaluations within the span of 2 weeks. So that kind of brings me to the end. I'm going to leave you with this. It's not the strongest of species that survives, nor the most intelligent, but the one that mostly that is most adaptable to change. And I want you to know adapting and change wasn't meant to be easy, as we all know, but with the help of one another, I'm hoping that we can all grow through this and become better educators in the end. You know, if you haven't been practicing that lifelong learning that we always talk about as educators, this is your opportunity. Again, I want to thank my mentors and colleagues at Pacific University for this process. I definitely think this is a direct reflection of my team, not just what I've done, but a team effort. And I'm really lucky to work with all of those people. Here's my references and resources that I use. That OSCE process evaluation box folder that you see there has everything that I've used. So literally what's mine is yours. Use it, tailor it to your needs for your school. The links are below that are the ones that I use for the platforms and the resources that I used. And then there's my email. Please contact me. If you have any questions, I would love to be a help and a resource or even someone to brainstorm with. And I'm going to send it to Ben for Q&A now. I want to thank you all again for joining. I hope you've taken a little golden nugget with you today.
All right, so thank you, Brandy. As a reminder to our audience, we are going to move into the Q&A portion of the webinar now. You can ask questions via the questions menu to your right, but please note one of the limitations of the GoToWebinar platform is that you only see questions that you submit. You don't see what everyone else is submitting. So feel free to answer any or type in any question that's popping in your head. Also, as a reminder, you can download a copy of these slides with the hyperlinks included that Brandy just mentioned from the handouts area to your right. So to start,
Ben, it sounds like we may have lost you.
sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay, our question was, how do we continue to develop hand skills virtually?
I can hear you, Ben. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I would say through video sessions, whether that's live conferencing or the student taking a video of their skills or whatever you're trying to observe and assess and submit for review. I feel that immediate formative feedback can be given either by the lead or other clinical instructors throughout the week. But if you're looking to continue to develop those skills, I would say it can be done through video conferencing and using the table rod, type it on. And if you need another device to see even closer to the area that you're looking at, looking into like a headband, some type of strap around the body, or a table rod that you can attach your phone to.
Okay, and our next question is, what are some effective ways to either teach or grade instrumentation online?
What are some effective ways to teach or grade instrumentation? So I would say it would be the same that typically some of the things that you would do if we weren't teaching online. So creating some type of instructional video, having students access that before maybe the virtual lecture, doing a live demonstration of that again, and then doing an entirety of the class and allowing students to demonstrate that virtually. So whether you break that up into different Zoom rooms, maybe you've got faculty helping you. Faculty can take, 4 to 5 students, put them in the room, and kind of do that same process for developing that. And then assessing that, I would say using rubrics, trying to use something standardized and objective so it's fair for students.
Okay, and our next question is, how will clinical ability to remove calculus from a patient's dentition be assessed? And what about the ability to give local anesthetic?
Okay. Yeah, that's a good question about local anesthetic for sure. You know, for calculus, this is something that we're still talking about, but we thought about students bringing their typodonts that they have to clinic and dropping them off, and having faculty somehow attach calculus to those areas. And, you know, I think for us, since we're not able to feel if that calculus was removed, of course, making that calculus a certain color, and being able to see all the different, you know, assessing up to the point of removing the calculus. You know, if you see that the terminal shank is not at the right angle, or the adaptation or something like that, you're obviously going to know if that's not an effective calculus removal stroke. But kind of making it standardized to put calculus on a typodont, the same for every student, and that way you know exactly each student is going to be removing it in those same ways. In terms for local anesthesia, we actually have some ideas floating around that we are going to use some type of putty to place in the mouth, or to place actually on a skull, and to have the feel of that soft tissue hitting the bone of the skull, kind of mimicking it in that way. But some of the injections that we're not able to do that, they're a little bit more difficult in terms of technique wise. We're pushing some of those to the fall semester, where students can do that during patient care.
And our next question is, did you have any students who could not finish the exam due to technical issues, and was there a protocol for retake?
So we had a few technical issues, but it was fixed within 3 minutes, so they were still able to complete the station. And if it had to do with timing, I actually brought a student into my Zoom room and finished that so the faculty could stay on track if that was the case. And if it turned out that they couldn't complete it because of technical issues, we would have scheduled something on another day. But if it couldn't be done and something happened with their high-speed internet or something like that, yeah, we would have figured something out for them to do it later on when, you know, those issues were fixed. And we do have a remediation process. We use the same one that we used for clinical patient care, and we just moved it virtually. So if they didn't pass something, they scheduled a remediation session with myself as the clinic lead. I went through the evaluation of what the faculty said, and we went through that via Zoom. They showed me skills, instrumentation skills, if it had to do with that. Specifically, we had one student that did not pass one of the OSCE stations, and it was barely. Well, we went through a case together, and that repeat session was on a different day. So we did a remediation session. I made sure the student, you know, knew, you know, what they needed to work on and clarified anything to ensure that they were going to be successful in the repeat. We did that on a different day, and I actually used a different case.
Okay, and we had a lot of questions related to the logistics of getting the instruments home. So can you speak to that a little bit? If our audience members have students at home that don't have their instruments, how would you suggest getting them to them? What do you require for your assessments? So can you just walk us through that a little bit?
Sure. So before COVID hit, we were actually going into our spring break. So we wanted students to take home their instruments, a typodont, and a table rod to practice their skills so they could come back ready. And it just worked out that that's what they needed, because we weren't going to come back after spring break. So for those students who didn't get those certain things, and we were in this before the stay-at-home order, we actually scheduled students in 15-minute increments where they could come to the school. A faculty member was there to let them in and help assist them getting, their instruments or items that they needed, while also maintaining social distancing. So I would say setting up some type of schedule where students can come in individually, maintaining social distancing, letting them get those items that they need from the school.
Okay, and our next question is, somebody said this is great for junior clinic, but how can we use this material for senior clinic and utilize some of the aspects for direct patient care?
So specifically for senior clinic, if we're talking about finishing up and having our seniors graduate, they utilized videos to do this instead of live streaming. But when we start looking into more direct patient care, I feel like it's definitely going to depend on what happens with the nation. If we're able to kind of open up and showcase these skills at the school, that would be even better. But specifically for senior clinic, I think you just have to look at what your expectations are and what you want the outcomes to be, and just see, is that something that we can assess virtually? Because a lot of the things that we were looking at, we could, but some of them, ultrasonics, polishing, things that the students didn't have that we couldn't do virtually at home, those were pushed to a different semester. So I think it's just really going to depend on, what happens in the future.
Okay, and we had another question just about timing. Somebody said this seems like it takes a lot of effort on your part. How much did it take for you to actually put these materials together?
Sure. This took me about a week and a half to put together, and I was chipping away at it every single day, I would say. The important thing to know is I developed all of this on my own. So if you can delegate these certain things, if people feel comfortable developing videos and taking a role, it's definitely going to take less time. But I would say I dedicated at least 4 to 5 hours every day getting all of this situated. But even for the calibration sessions with students, it was an hour. Calibration with faculty, it was an hour. And then maybe sometimes it was more depending on the needs of the student. If they had more questions, I would assist them more, or, with faculty, if they needed more calibration and just wanted to practice their station, I was going to be that student for them. So I'd just log on. And what's nice is we're all at home during the day. So unfortunately, I was working sometimes later than expected, but it seemed very manageable and doable.
All right, our next question is, what was the student feedback on this process?
Yeah, so like I mentioned in one of the last slides, since I wasn't able to give a survey out to them, I specifically, when I met with them, just said, how did it go? Was it better than you expected? And lots of good feedback. I think the one thing that came back was the enable waiting rooms, that some of them felt like some faculty used the waiting room and some didn't. So when they chimed in, it kind of distracted them a little bit and kind of took away from their time. But also just sharing the screen and showing a full mouth series. Students didn't like that they couldn't scroll through and zoom in on those areas. And, if you felt comfortable sending a file through and knowing that students weren't going to share that with each other, to ensure that they have a fair opportunity at the station, then you can do that. But those were the two things that came back as something they wish would change. But overall, they were really happy with how this went, and they specifically commented on their critical thinking skills because they had to verbalize what they were doing through the whole process.
Okay, thank you. And our next question is, were all cases using standardized patients?
Sorry, Ben, can you repeat that?
No problem, sure. Were all cases using standardized patients?
Yes, yes.
So our next question is, how did you determine course hours for CODA?
Course hours for CODA. I'm going to take a guess at this, meaning how long that it took to facilitate this. So I'm not sure if this question is asking based on the missed hours in clinic, how we were going to make that up, or if they were specifically asking hours that we utilized in clinic. So if we had a Monday, Wednesday clinic, everything was facilitated during that time with faculty and during that time with students. In terms of course hours that were missed because of the COVID-19, our students missed 40 hours, I believe, for junior clinic. And we are pushing those hours because it's direct patient care. And again, we're still kind of waiting to see what CODA is going to say in the summer for the class of 2021. But for right now, we push those to the fall semester. And those students have a work in progress right now.
Thank you. So our next question is, do you think that this type of teaching and learning can be done with incoming dental hygiene students that have no dental knowledge?
That is a really good question. I don't really have the answer for that. I think with moving forward, if we have to move forward this way, I think it's a great way of testing. Do we think that we're seeing the skills that we want? But I think it's important to not shut down virtual learning if we think this can't be done. Just because it hasn't been done before doesn't mean it can't.
Okay. Our next question is, somebody wanted to know more about Flipgrid. Can you overview what that software tool is?
Yeah, so it's used in elementary all the way up to higher education, but it's a kind of a nice big community. You can create your own grid, which is kind of your own little website where students can go in and post videos, specifically focused on videos. And I think the max is about 5 minutes for the video. So it's supposed to be a nice snippet of what you're trying to assess, or maybe you've given them a prompt that you want them to elaborate on to show communication skills. This is just a fun way to post that out there. But what we used it for is them actually showcasing their skills, posting it, and myself as the lead, I went through and reviewed those videos and gave them feedback. And it was nice for them because I was able to give them feedback on certain things I wanted them to focus on before actually taking the process evaluation or the OSCE.
Okay, and we're continuing to get some questions about hardware requirements. So can you just go down the list of what you required of the students?
Yeah, because this was done so fast and we didn't want to require our students to buy a bunch of stuff, we utilized their computer as the main way to video. Some students were able to attach their phone to them and video themselves that way too. So I just let them play around with that. But when it came down to it, we knew that everyone had a computer and a webcam, and we practiced that. So that was the main thing that we used. But making sure that they had a Type-It-On, table rod, and whatever else items that you wanted them to have. But we're actually looking into the headband strap. We're going to test a few things, but there's a headband strap that's, I don't know, about less than $7. Students can attach their phone to it and showcase their skills that way. I don't know if everyone's familiar with, Instagram famous or Facebook, people who do a bunch of cooking, they actually have a table rod that attaches to the table, and you can put your phone on there and it swivels. So for me, I think that would be the next step for me, is I would want students to purchase that. And I think that is on Amazon. It's less than $50, but that can be utilized to help facilitate this a little bit easier, specifically because we think students' phones, the iPhones, the capability and the quality is a lot better than the computer.
All right, I'm going to circle back to the timing question that we had a little earlier and just how much effort you put into creating this. Somebody asked a question about creating patient cases. Can you go into a little detail about how you went about that process?
Yeah, so we actually had some patient cases that we could choose from. I know a great resource is dentalcare.com. They've got some great standardized cases. for faculty resources to use. They've got entire medical history, patient information, perio charts, radiographs. They even have specialty cases. You know, if you're looking specifically for, let's say, oral pathology, they've got some great stuff on there for faculty resources that you could utilize to develop cases.
Okay, and our next question is, did these OSCEs replace any patient care requirements?
They did not replace patient care requirements, meaning for us, that means how many patients that they completed, and they did not. So any of those patients that they needed to complete, we're kind of rolling over to the next semester, knowing that now we've got a whole pool of patients that need to be seen, and some of these patients have already been started and just need to be completed. So it didn't replace patient requirements. It did replace some clinical requirements, such as the OSCE and all of the process evaluations that weren't able to be done during patient care. Radiographic requirements that we have specifically for our program were pushed to the fall semester.
And our next question is, are students and participants able to record and then share their presentations with other students who have not yet been examined?
That's a great question. So in Zoom, there is a setting where you can eliminate students being able to record that session via Zoom. So you can change that. I know for me, I've tried to even try to record some different webinars, and what's nice is they do have that function in there that you can't record it. So as long as that's set up in the settings, you should be good with that. What's nice here too is knowing like the students were so nervous about doing this that they weren't trying to find a shortcut or easier way or to share information. I mean, it seemed like they really liked the process and very into it. But that's why we didn't share the files in the chat for them to open up on their computer, because we specifically wanted to give them the information and take the information away.
All right, it looks like we might be able to get to one or two more questions. So our next one is, which type of skills would you say were easiest to assess this way using Zoom?
You know, I would say that for us, I mean, this was specific for dental hygiene. We're looking at the we looked at the facial surfaces mostly when we were looking at instrumentation. I mean, if you're able to move around and see those lingual surfaces, but this was, I thought it was just as easy to see that. I think adaptation-wise, if you're able to get closer to that image, so if the student was using some type of table rod where they could zoom in with their phone to what they were doing, I thought that was easy. But with the standardized cases and giving students the information and asking them questions, you know, maybe I was the patient and they were supposed to teach me something, or I was another dental healthcare professional, just showing that communication, it was just as easily to see that and assess that the same way.
All right, so it looks like that's all we'll be able to get to today for Q&A. So thank you, Brandy, for your insights and thoughtful responses to our audience questions. And if you can advance the slide, before we sign off, I have a few additional notes for our audience. First, as I mentioned at the start of this program, this event was designed as part of a series of crowdsourced, just-in-time webinars from ADEA to help our membership transition their educational methods in light of COVID-19. If anyone in the audience has additional topics they would like to see explored in future webinars, or even would like to present themselves, please do let us know in the post-event survey. You can find a link to that survey in the chat menu to your right. You will also receive an email in an hour with that same information. CE credit is available after completing the survey, and a recording of the presentation will be on adea.org/elearn within a few business days. Outside of webinars, I also want to mention two ways that you can stay connected and share your ideas with the ADEA membership. The first is ADEA Connect, a member-only site that has a COVID-19 community where anyone can pose questions and seek input from other dental education professionals. And secondly, there is a new article type just launched called Advancing Through Innovation from the Journal of Dental Education. More information can be found in the handouts area to your right, but this new article type is limited to 500 words or less, has a fast review process, and is designed to showcase creativity in health professions education, especially given our current circumstances. So that concludes today's session. Thank you, everyone. Please stay safe and have a great day.